Dun, 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 dun. Hey everybody, 10 p.m. Central Time, June 27th, 2016. Hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear. Can everybody hear me? I just dropped my microphone, so I want to make sure it works before I get going. Is there any static or any strange sounds coming out of my microphone, other than my voice, of course? Okay, good. Good. Welcome everybody in. Right now, looks like we've got about 220 people in the chat room. Want to welcome everybody in who's a returning person, and to the new people who are into the chat. Welcome in. This is the Earthquake 3D live stream, where we stream earthquakes all day long, and we document the earthquakes that are striking and compare it to the earthquake forecast that I issue once a week. And if you're not familiar with that, you probably should just jump over to my main YouTube channel, check out this week's earthquake forecast, and then jump back over here, rewind a little bit, and watch what we're doing in the update now. And since last night's 10 p.m. update, we'll go ahead and show you what happened in the last 24 hours in the United States and internationally. Now let's just get into the international activity first, just because a few things struck that were interesting to me, probably just to me alone and a few people who are keeping track. You may remember last night I was talking about North Japan, north of Hokkaido, near the Kuril Islands, as the next spot to watch for earthquake activity. And you can see on the map here now a 4.5. Some agencies have it at a 5, but the USGS has it at 4.5. So we'll go with that. 4.5 striking north of Hokkaido, south of the Kuril Islands, right in the area we're watching for the next round of movement to occur. Now we're still watching for a large earthquake to strike in this region, especially North Japan. So watch out over the next few days. I just thought bring you aware on that. And then over here in South Russia, West China, North Kazakhstan, right here the swarm carries on with larger earthquakes developing out. There was a series of 4s yesterday, 4.4s. It's kind of weird to actually see how many 4.4s struck. But then it ratcheted up to 5.3, 5.1. So we may be looking at a larger earthquake in a nearby area to this. And this all comes after the deep earthquake that struck. And let me just go ahead and show that to you really quick. Okay, it's raised somewhat high off the globe here. It's kind of hard to see. But this deeper earthquake on the screen shows us that there was movement down below the plate that caused the upwelling pressure and caused the larger earthquake. Also caused all the 4s that you see on the map. Right now we're looking at the last 2.5, 3 days of earthquakes. So all the 4s are showing, all the 5s are showing, the 6.4 and the deep earthquake that set it all off. Additionally, as if that wasn't enough, we started to see new activity reach over towards Europe, which, to see that, we have to turn on the European feed. This is the last 50 earthquakes from the Europeans. So this shows us all the 5s that struck today, and then look at all the activity in South Europe. Look what happened since last night's update. We talked about the pressure creeping across Europe, going up towards England. I even opened up the British Geological Survey website, told you guys all about it. We even talked about it in the Q&A. Now you can see North Italy was struck, and then the English Channel, just south of England, north of France, coast of Normandy, struck by a 3.1. That's no shock. We were looking for it. We were watching for 3.0 activity to 4.0 activity, and the lower end of that, the 3.1, struck. So that's just an update internationally. Now, let's get into the U.S. because most of my viewers here are from the U.S. and a lot of them right now on the West Coast concerned about what's happening. And I don't blame you because there's some serious stuff that's going on. The pipeline that ruptured 3 days ago in Los Angeles, just north of Los Angeles, as well as the swarm in Southern California and Northern California. What is that going to lead to? Well, first, I'd like to show you guys. Remember how I said to watch off the coast of Oregon for new movement to strike? It was the silent zone. Well, look what happened today. 2.9, 1.2 struck right along the coast of Oregon. Now, that's small movement. We're watching for something larger off the coast. But you can see it crept up the coast since last night. Let me just turn these down to last night and then bring it back forward to right now. You can see the line of earthquakes progresses up from Southern California and goes right up the coast, meaning that there's pressure building off the coast. And just like I said last night, we still have to watch for a few more days. But you can see it happening before your eyes day by day if you're tuning in. It's just really interesting to see. So where do we go from this? Well, let me back this out. We're going to go look up a few of these earthquakes to show you guys what's going on right now. Now, every day I've been telling you for the last week, week and a half, all of these that have been striking were striking at dormant volcanoes and pumping operations. Well, now we're starting to see movement occur along the fault zones. In addition to all the magma chambers that moved, all the pumping operations that moved, now we've come up even further. The pressure has now come up an additional level, above the magma chambers, above the pumping operations, but below the ground actual surface. And that takes us right into our fault zones. Fault zones starting to move. You can see it. There are not dormant volcanoes at these locations to the north. There are not pumping operations just to the east of South San Joaquin Valley. So what's going on there? Well, just to the east of there, the dormant volcanoes have moved again. And I'd like to show those to you because a lot of people were, saying, oh, you only showed one location. They're not all volcanic. You're exaggerating. That's what one person said. I said, you got to be kidding me. You think I'm exaggerating? Let's take the largest earthquake of the bunch here. Well, we got a 2.3, 2.8, and a 1.2. I'm sorry, that's a 1.8, a 1.2, and a 1.3. Let's go with the middle of the bunch. Let's go with the 1.2. And I'll get the coordinates on this. This may close out a window for you so you can't see the number of people watching right now. There's nothing I can do about that. We'll get the coordinates for that, and we will put it in on Google Earth. And this is what you do whenever you want to find out what's at an earthquake epicenter. You'd be shocked to find that there's a lot of reasons behind the earthquakes that happen at these different locations. It's not just happening randomly. Okay, there we go. Look where this earthquake struck. Right inside, right next to an obsidian dome on the Coso volcanic field. And the Coso field goes down south to Volcano Peak, which I showed in previous videos. As you can see on the screen here now, the dark lava flows, and you may hear a ding and a rumble. That's an earthquake striking as I'm talking. And we'll get over to that in a second to show you what just struck. But on the screen here now, here's Volcano Peak, and then we go just north, and here's the Coso field. Now I'm going to open up a screen. You won't be able to read it, because there's no way for me to share this, but the Coso volcanic field, located east of the Sierra Nevada range at the western edge of the basin and range province, consists of Pliocene and Quaternary rhyolitic lava domes and basaltic cinder cones covering a 400 square kilometer area. So, when you look at this and you see these, let me zoom in really close and you can make out that these are obviously domes that have uplifted, and they're obsidian, where they're covered in obsidian, which is a volcanic rock. They call these the obsidian domes, and this is just one of many. Obviously they stand out. There's many more that are weathered down over the years, but that's where the earthquake struck, right near, well, the smallest of the bunch. maybe even the newest of the bunch. So that's really interesting to see. This is why I go look up the earthquakes. Now, if that was just the only one, you'd say, okay, it's just randomly happening there. But it's happening all the way up the entire, let's see here, let's show you. It's better to show you than just to tell you. Happening all the way up the entire border of California and Nevada. And we can go look up more of these, and you'll see that they're also falling at different volcanoes. Now, you can just make this out a little bit. You can make out the valley here. And now I don't have to pull the coordinates on this. We can go due north of the valley, up here to the top tip of the valley, and let me show you what's there. Just follow this valley due north. Make sure we bring it due north. There we go. Follow it north. And we get up here. Now you see to the west, of course, what's there. Lee's Flats. And keep going to the north, to the tip of it. And what do we have? We run right into another volcanic field. And I've shown this before many times. Taboos Creek. And it's really impressive, really, when you look at these different cinder cones that exist here. And the lava flows that exist off that. Now that keeps going north, and if we just were to keep going north, you'll see the larger supervolcano in the region, Mono Lake. And that is a supervolcano. It's confirmed. It's roughly the size of Yellowstone, a little bit smaller. But it's at the top of the Long Valley. And the Long Valley goes all the way down here to where our earthquake just struck. So that's pretty interesting to see. You guys probably didn't see any of the second portion of that because YouTube is lagging behind. I don't know if you guys have been having problems on YouTube today with the live stream, but every time I'm starting to get on, I'm having major problems with YouTube's live streaming. I'm thinking that there's something going on. I don't know, because we were doing just fine. Then the earthquake started to strike in the spots that we were warning, and the live stream starts crapping out again. So I almost have to go back over everything that I just said, which I will. Okay, when we get up here, we'll just keep going north. Oh, God, I love it. Okay, here, I have to start over, right? Not a problem. So when we look at the earthquakes and we go all the way down here to where I was just showing you at a volcano peak, okay, we'll back this out and go due north and keep going north. And look what we have. More impressive volcanic cones. Taboos Creek, I've shown before. Like I said, when you couldn't see it, impressive cinder cones, lava flows, and then we go further north, and we just keep going north past Bishop, and you get up to Mono Lake Supervolcano, which is a supervolcano, no doubt about it, size of Yellowstone. So that's kind of just a repeat of what I just said when you couldn't see it. Not really missing too much other than to let you know the whole area is being uplifted from underneath. And it's being pushed to the east-southeast, and it's causing movement now on the fault zones next to the dormant volcanoes, meaning the pressure is rising, and we're going to see a shallower, larger earthquake in the next few days, most likely in Southern California, in the warned area where we warned, also off the coast. So we have two different spots. Let's back this out again. This is just the last 24 hours of earthquakes. Now, if that was the only spot, like I said, it wouldn't matter, but we're talking about multiple other dormant volcanoes that have moved over the past 24, causing the fault zones to show activity, and it's spreading to the north. So where do we watch to the north? Well, let's turn down the rings again, and we're going to watch at the volcanic fields off the coast, and this would be just off the coast of, I guess, northwest Oregon, going into southwest Washington, and it would probably be better served if I opened back up Google Earth and showed it to you there, because it's higher resolution. Here we go, okay? And here is Northern California. Hopefully you guys can see that. You sure can. Here's Northern California, state line. And we get up to Northern Oregon, going into Washington, and we get just to the west. And this takes us to the East Blanco Depression and the cleft segment. Now you're going to see earthquakes that I have marked that occurred previously. And we actually forecast this to occur, by the way. The 5.9 that struck here, June 2nd, 2015. There was a 2-day warning issued for that, and it struck directly in there. We issued a warning for a mid-5 to 6.0 earthquake to strike this spot, and it struck. Well, we're seeing the pressure build again, and it will strike most likely at the volcanic field here, not just along the fault, but at the volcanic field located right next to the fault. Now, that could strike as far east as these smaller buttes, which you can see here, undersea volcanoes, no doubt about it. There's one, here's another 2, 3. So it could strike anywhere between here and to the west at the cleft segment, and it should be over the next couple days, maybe next 3 to 4 days at the end of the forecast time period. So let's just bring you back over and show you Earthquake 3D and show you the earthquakes that just struck that dinged off while I was talking. Over the past few minutes, let's just turn it down. There we go. Over the past few minutes, a 2.1 struck out in central Nevada. That looks like it happened at the Range 61 volcanic buttes. We should go look that up. And then a new 1.2 striking at Salton Sea volcanic buttes, yet once again on top of the swarm. This is just the last day, last 24 hours since last night's update. The swarm in Northern California also carrying on at Geyser Peak Volcano. But let's just go ahead and go look up the earthquake that just occurred out here in Nevada, which is really interesting to see. It's larger than the activity to the south, again meaning that the pressure is spreading north. Ah, look where it struck. Oh, you can't see it. Warm Springs, Nevada. Boy, I wonder what's there. Warm Springs, Nevada. Let's go check it out. Let me turn back on Google Earth. And I do this real time, so this is a real-time update. If we see something strike while I'm talking, it's best just to go look it up and see what's there instead of guessing and trying to figure out. Okay. Basalt Butte. Oh, the creative names on these volcanoes. You know, last night it was, what was it, cone crater or something? Crater cone? Okay. Basalt Butte. Take a look at it. Telltale sign, basalt, old volcanic. You can see the flat top nature on this. This flowed out lava at some point. You can imagine what, at some point in the past, this split open on the top and released lava out the top, and it flowed down the sides and gave a cap on this. Now imagine what that was like if you were an American Indian here and that thing blows its top and it just starts flowing lava out the top and covers itself in lava. That's the only spot there. But then look to the south. Look at this. The Lunar Craters Volcanic Center. And I wonder how many miles that is. Hold on. Let's just take a quick look. 10 miles to the south is a huge volcanic field. And when you look at it, it really does look like lunar craters. And they're huge. There's so many of them. Let you know the volcanic history, the past of the United States, is one written in volcanism that nobody knows about. This whole thing, and it goes down further, all the way to the south. We won't get too sidetracked here, but I just love looking at this stuff. Goblin Knobs Volcanic Center. More of the same, just older. And again, look how these flowed. At some point in the past, the highest point here erupted, spewed out lava, which turned into, of course, our red and black igneous rocks that we see here, and the basalt. But just imagine what that was like when this occurred. Each one of these little peaks ruptured. Each one, all the way up. And you can look at the nature of these. You can really see the old lava flows here. And right here at the center, that was the portion that erupted. So in the past, at some point in the past, this was just an insane amount of, and when you look at the greater number of volcanoes, right? So the whole area rose out of the sea, and there were inland seas trapped in here. See all the sand here? All the white sands? Okay, many of these lake basins, this was all filled with water in between these spots. These volcanoes rose up out of the sea in this inland ocean that was trapped here. Eventually it broke and flowed out down through the Grand Canyon. I believe that's what formed the Grand Canyon. It wasn't the Colorado River. The Grand Canyon was formed by the flowing out of the inland ocean that was garnered in on all sides by volcanoes. And the volcanoes obviously laid a wall and trapped that inland ocean, which finally gave way and flowed out through the Grand Canyon. But we're getting way sidetracked on just a regular earthquake update. But you got to understand the greater geology that's playing into it that you were never told about. So down to the south, look at the activity. Of course, Salton Sea Buttes showing activity. The volcanoes to the north showing activity. The fault line showing activity. All signs pointing towards a larger earthquake on the coast in the next few days, most likely striking, and again in the silent zone. That's also the volcanic zone off the coast of Oregon or Washington State. If it doesn't strike, of course, we'll issue a correction, and again, we're looking for one magnitude larger than the combined total of all the movement that we've seen so far. So that takes us up into the 5.0 range, most likely, or a swarm of fours. Could be a few fours, or it could be one single larger earthquake. That's most likely the option at this point. Of course, there's one more option, which would be a volcanic eruption, which I don't think will happen. Speaking of volcanic eruptions, Popo just erupted down in Mexico at the same time the 5.7 hit, or within a few hours of the 5.7 that struck along the coast of Mexico. Popocatépetl, or I hope I'm saying that right, got struck. Here, let me get a sip of coffee here, guys. Got to keep my allergies suppressed here. Oh, man. Awesome. I'm going to be up late tonight. Don't worry, I'll be doing Q&A tonight with vigor because I'm drinking plenty of coffee. So anyways, the 5.7 struck here along the coast, and Popo erupted at the same time. Now just go back 2 days, and down here to the south, Costa Rica. In case you guys don't know where Costa Rica is, everybody's geographically challenged. Let's zoom in here. We've got Panama, we've got Nicaragua, we've got Costa Rica, okay, South Central America. And 2 volcanic blasts happened, which caught some people off guard. Turrialba always erupts, but the other volcano, Paos, P-A-O-S volcano, that one doesn't normally erupt. Then now followed by Popo. So when you add in those 3 different volcanic eruptions in the past 2-3 days, now 5.7 striking the area, go back and watch the forecast. We warned for a new volcanic eruption to strike across Nicaragua, most likely just north of Nicaragua, we said it. So that happened. Now the 5.7 struck. Again, in the silent zone of Mexico, talked about it in the forecast, talked about the watch to the north and to the south. Additionally, to the south, check it out. 4.3 struck right in South Ecuador. We talked about South Ecuador. We talked about the silent zone on Peru. That's now starting to move to the north and to the south, but the silent zone in between has not, letting you know the area is prime. This is the next few days. Now, I've already talked about this in the forecast. If you're a new viewer and you haven't seen me before, I do forecasts once a week. There's what? How many people are in chat right now? 382 people in here right now. Welcome in, everybody. If you're new, you can just click on my name and it'll take you over to my YouTube channel, and there you can see my forecast for this week or any of the other weeks. And you can compare to what actually strikes. And you can also tune in here nightly at 10 p.m. where I do live updates and just let everybody know what's striking and compare to the areas that I warn. Because I really want to document the areas being hit versus the areas that are missed. And of course, people say that earthquakes can't be forecast. And they're wrong. We're documenting it daily and showing people what goes into the reasoning behind how the forecast is generated. So the forecast itself is issued on my channel, and the full explanations I do every night. So the reason we're looking for activity to strike in the Pacific Northwest right now is that there's something that's pushing all of this to the east-southeast right now. As far east as Yellowstone, where the smaller earthquakes are, and as far southeast as the fracking operations in Oklahoma. So something's upwelling pressure large enough to move the whole west coast. Let's show you the larger earthquakes only. As a matter of fact, let me turn on the USGS the last 7 days. And we'll turn down the earthquakes for the last 2-3 days. And you can see the whole west coast has moved on at least a 2.7 level. Now these started out as 2.9s. Most of these started out as 2.9s. So we saw all 2.9s down the coast. Now they revised them a few, which is normal. But here along the coast, up here in the northwest, all the way down to the southwest, 2.9s, meaning that there's going to be at least 1 magnitude larger, possibly 2, striking off the coast. Something's pushing all that. And the spots that are being hit are the pumping operations, the dormant volcanoes, and now the fault zones adjacent to the pumping operations and dormant volcanoes. And why are the pumping operations and dormant volcanoes being hit? Because the pressure is coming up from down below. And nestled into the crust are the magma chambers for the volcanoes and the drill spots where they're injecting either water or extracting oil or gas. Those are also puncture points where in the crust it's a weak spot, and the pressure searches out the weak spot and it finds a place to release, and it will release there, whether it's man-made or natural. And again, it's all signed that there's pressure building off the coast, which professionals deny and say that earthquakes are not related to one another even. So you see the earthquakes that strike right next to each other over just a day or two's time, like along the Izu Ridge, over here in the West Pacific. These are color-coded by age. So you can see yesterday's earthquakes, the light pink, versus today's earthquakes, the white. And yesterday we were talking about all the movement to the south, and I told everybody, watch to the north. It's silent along the coast of Japan. That's the spot to watch, from central Japan to North Japan, Hokkaido, Kuril Islands. You can see the white earthquakes on the map here now. Tell the tale that yesterday it struck to the south, then it transferred up the ridge to the north by nearly 1,000 miles all the way up and struck near Japan. So what does it mean? It means earthquakes transfer across a distance. It means the professionals got it wrong when they said they don't. And when they sent their best over to my pages to come against me and actually troll me, you guys wouldn't believe it. I'm not going to tell you other than if you're a new viewer, I was smeared in the media. I was smeared by the USGS and all the professionals. They came to my actual social media pages and said some pretty nasty things. That's actually kind of funny. But they went into CBS News and the big guys. They all came out and tried to deny earthquake forecasting. And the reason they're denying it is because they have an ego to protect. Because they previously said it was impossible to forecast earthquakes because they couldn't do it. And because they couldn't do it, they said it was impossible, that no one could. Because surely if they can't do it, no one else can. Their best supercomputers can't. So I'm trying to show people what is relating into the earthquake forecasts, and that's where we are now. I'm writing a book. The book will be released in the next several months, and it will be fully documenting how to forecast an earthquake and seismic activity overall, how to forecast volcanic activity, and we'll get into that at a later date. For my international viewers, there's now Spanish translations being done by the Dutch Squad Earthquake Group on Facebook. Want to commend them and thank them. You can look them up, Dutch Squad EQ, over on Facebook. And for my European viewers, I promised you guys, for my European and Canadian viewers, I promised you guys I would be doing a little bit more in-depth on Europe and Canada since you guys were asking. And I think it's prudent at this point that, maybe I even dedicate a separate update to the international audience. So that we, first of all, so that we don't get into, how long have I been going right now? I've been going 25 minutes. So that we don't get into an hour-long, 2-hour-long update. I can break it down. I can either do it during a time that's convenient for people in Europe, so you don't have to stay up at God knows what time it is right now. There is, what is it, 6 a.m. there? Nearing 6 a.m.? Somewhere in that 4 a.m. I mean, we can bump it back. I stay up all night. I can do an update when it's more convenient for people in Europe. But just really quick, I just want to touch on Europe because we have CERN. CERN back in action. CERN dropping the beams again. CERN's definitely doing dogleg experiments, dropping the beams to ground, and now we start to see a new round of earthquakes developing out around Switzerland, North Italy, going up into North France. We talked about this at length in many other videos. But it's important to stress to my European viewers, it appears that your earthquakes that are happening in North Europe are directly tied to the beam drops at CERN. And when CERN's not doing its thing, you're all good. And your activity strikes to the south and remains to the south and spreads to the south. You'll see it go all the way over to Gibraltar, then pass over to Canaries and Azores, and then release on the ridge. But when CERN's going, all of a sudden you see this swarm of earthquakes break out in Central Europe, going up into Northern Europe, then up to the North Pole and releasing up here. And it could be playing into the eruption that's getting ready to happen at Hekla. I'm not joking that the Hekla eruption in Iceland and Barderbunga, when they erupted back in 2014, look, you got to tie in CERN and what was going on at the time. It's too big of a coincidence that CERN was in operation in 2011 when Japan got hit. CERN was in operation when Nepal got hit. CERN was in operation when Japan just got hit a couple months ago, and when Ecuador just got hit a couple months ago. Not to mention several other large earthquakes that struck over the past few years. CERN was in full operation or bringing the beams into alignment. And then they always, after the big earthquake strikes, within a day or two, have some mystery shutdown that causes their shutdown. This last time it was a weasel that supposedly got in and chewed through the power cables at CERN. Like CERN's a computer that you can chew through a power cable on, like your dog could chew through a power cable. Really? Really? I mean, come on, CERN is powered with trillions of electron volts, banks of klystrons. The power cables on CERN are going to be the size of Godzilla. They're going to be huge. I mean, it's just insane for them to say that a weasel shut it down. It was because of the earthquakes. So when we look into Europe and we try to forecast the earthquakes for Europe, well, give me a CERN schedule and we'll time that. As a matter of fact, somebody should just check with Greg Hanford, who's probably in here. Greg Hanford is our premier CERN observer if you will, that he observes CERN and he documents CERN. He's, I would call, an expert at this point on the subject. He's not a professional, he's not getting paid for it, but he's an expert on the topic. He's actually paid attention enough that he can tell you what's going on at CERN at any given time, and we have the real-time feeds over on TAT's page. You can go to TAT's website, TATOOTT, Tattoot1009.com, and he's got the live CERN feeds there. You guys can click on it and watch when they're doing their beam drops, and compare to the earthquakes. You'll just, there is a connection, for sure. So when I get into Europe, again, I have to just address that the earthquakes that are going to strike are most likely going to strike around or in Switzerland, and they will be in relation to the earthquakes to the south, but they'll strike to the central portion of the plate as opposed to hang to the south and go to the west, like it should. So in other words, CERN is pulling your seismic activity up to Central and North Europe and causing additional earthquakes where I feel they would never normally occur. In that we look back in time, and when CERN's in operation, you start getting all these English Channel earthquakes. Really? You start getting earthquakes across North Italy and across Switzerland and Austria. Really? That can't be just a coincidence. And it's not just there. Once CERN starts doing the beam drops, we start seeing deep earthquakes in the West Pacific at the same time. That then causes shallow, larger earthquakes. So not only is it going down to ground in Switzerland itself and causing earthquakes around Central Europe and North Europe, but it's also, I believe, firmly believe, causing new volcanic eruptions and deep earthquakes. As the trillions of electron volts go down to the plasma core of the Earth, the plasma core of the Earth then either heats up or actually physically expands. And that would mean human-induced activity causing earthquakes around the planet by dumping trillions of electron volts to ground after collision. And strangelets, who knows what happens. No one can really tell me what happens when strange particles enter a magnetic field that goes to ground. Supposedly all caught by the magnetic fields. We never know. I don't like guessing on that kind of stuff, but I can tell you this, they are. Now, let's really quick address Canada. Any larger earthquake that strikes in Canada will show up on my feeds for Earthquake 3D, but unfortunately, Canada doesn't provide a accessible CSV feed or Atom feed that will work in any app known to man. We'd have to actually have an RSS feed, the old school, just the scrolling data, like a scrolling, I don't even know what to call it, like a news ticker. That would be the kind of data that we could have streaming, or at least pulled live from the Canadian site. Or I could do a screen share. I could open up their website and then turn on my video recorder and screen share it somehow. But they don't provide a feed that I can throw into Earthquake 3D and easily monitor. But I can tell you this, the larger earthquakes, let's just say above 4.0, more like 4.5, usually will be recorded by the USGS, or at least data shared by the Canadian agency, and it'll show up on our feeds. If it's under that, it most likely won't show. Like for instance, the 3.3 that struck just 5 or 6 days, whatever, 7 days ago, 10 days ago, struck here in South Ontario. That didn't get reported by the USGS. Even though it was right on the US border, you would think a 3.0 in the Northeast would make the news, but they totally ignored it. We had to rely on, well, word of mouth, then I had to go check, went to the Canadian site, verified it, but I still couldn't get it on the screen. But the activity that happens in Canada happens along the edge of the craton. The craton is the plate. It's just a geological term somebody created to describe plates. And it's the unsubducted portion. It's the part that hasn't ever moved very much. And its boundary is defined by the mountain ranges. Now these are color-coded here on the map. I think you guys can see this here. Sure can. Okay, here on the map they're color-coded. So height is indicated by brown, the browner and reddish colors indicating height. So we go up here into North Canada, up into Alaska. See this edge? The edge of that, if you want to call it an edge, where the mountain ranges lie. On the inside edge is what is known, what I call, the edge of the craton, the inner craton. And this is the part that doesn't move much normally, but lately we've been seeing earthquakes develop all along the edge of the craton, just to the east, and right along the center portion of it. Now the craton goes all the way down through central Colorado and New Mexico, bends down into Texas, curls, you can see the edge here, the yellow edge, okay, that's again height elevation, takes 1,000-foot rise right through here. Maybe 50-mile, 100-mile stretch, it goes up 1,000 feet. But anyways, it curls up and goes up into Oklahoma and Kansas, and then goes over to the east through the New Madrid seismic zone, then goes back down here to the south, and then back up the east coast, the mountain ranges, right? Well, that's the edge of the craton, and there is where the earthquakes are striking. Ironically, they're also doing the fracking operations there, all along the edge of the craton. So, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, South Wyoming, going up into Alberta and British Columbia, Canada, all those oil and fracking and pumping operations, of course, right? You guys know what I'm talking about up in Canada. Then fracking operations further to the south through Tuscaloosa, Alabama, then skipping Georgia, and then going back up to the northeast where we have Pennsylvania, West Virginia, New York. They're all doing the fracking again, pulling that natural gas out of the edges of the craton, out of the shale that exists along the edge of the craton. So it plays into Canada because it goes all the way up here to the northeast. You see here the split or the crack. It would be better served if I showed you again on Google Earth. Let's back this out, and we will turn off my place marks. And how many people are in here right now? I just want to make sure. Oh, it looks like we've got nearly 400 people in. Want to welcome all the new people in and everybody who's a returning regular. We cover this every night at 10 p.m., covering the most recent earthquakes and going into why they strike. Try to cover everywhere on the planet somewhat so that all my viewers get a coverage and you get an idea of what's happening over a 24-hour period. You know what to expect tomorrow. So let's get back over to Google Earth. And for my Canadian viewers, you guys are going to see this, and once you see it, you'll understand why you only get your activity, your major activity, in the west and the east, and the central portion remains relatively stable. Now, I was just talking about the edge of the craton and how it bends and curves, and the mountain ranges kind of give it away. Well, this is actual satellite imagery now. Combined satellite imagery from high above. What's our altitude? 2,400 miles out, 5,000 miles out. Okay, we're coming in. Altitude's in the lower right-hand corner. Now we're at 450 miles, 100 miles, and 90, 80 miles. Okay, so anyways, when we're zooming in here, you can see the edge of the craton, the edge of the plate. And you see how it goes up here to the split, where you have the inlet. I don't even know the name of the waterway there. I guess it doesn't really matter, but let's find out. Just northeast of Quebec City. And when you get out there, you see that it actually goes out into the ocean, where we have a trench that's lightly defined by undersea measurements. Sonar, I guess. They would have taken measurements out here, and that's what gives us our undersea topography. But do you see that? I hope that you guys can make that out on the screen. You sure can. At least I can. Now that crack, or that split, or that edge goes right down to the south and meets up with the Great Lakes, but it curls over to the east and goes down the east coast. Now, what areas got struck with earthquakes in the past several days? New Jersey and New Hampshire. In case you don't know where they reside here on the edge of the craton, New Hampshire struck here, and New Jersey to the south struck here. Look where they reside. New Jersey, right on the eastern tip of the craton, and New Hampshire right along the split as it goes right around the Great Lakes and back up to the northeast. Now, Canada, you get struck on the interior edge, just like we talked about over here on the west. You get struck on the interior edge to the east. So, Ottawa, Montreal, going up into New Brunswick, because this peels out and goes over into the ocean, remember? So, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, you all get struck, sometimes even North Maine, get struck by 2 to 3.0 earthquakes after we see 2 and 3.0 earthquake strike in the Midwest. And that's what's just happened over the past several days. Only in this case, it was 2s that struck in the Midwest, going into 3s, and then we saw 1s and 2s on the East Coast. That just happened over the past several days. And right now we have a new swarm building in the Midwest for the Midwestern states. As if that wasn't all enough, one final place that we're watching here in the United States, I just covered Europe, we just covered South America. Again, we're watching our areas for more volcanic eruptions and larger earthquake movement. But for the United States, we also have our watch zone in the New Madrid seismic zone, which is my neighborhood. Now, we're not watching for much. We're not watching for a huge earthquake. We're just watching for the leftovers coming from the fracking operation. And a sign that the fracking operation is still moving now means we're going to move to the east. Finally, it'll go up the east coast and hit everybody on the East Coast in the far northeast. Most likely, like I said, up in Canada, just at the U.S.-Canada border. That's all in the earthquake forecast. So the areas that we warned in the forecast are being hit now. If you want to know which areas to watch, go watch the forecast. Click on my name right now below the video. Go watch the forecast. It's somewhat long, but I've got it timestamped so you can just fast forward through it and find your location, whether you're in North America, South America, Asia, Australia. That's one location I haven't covered yet and I need to get into, but we're not going to bother doing that now. I'm sorry to my Australian viewers, guys, but we'll get into that a little bit later in the Q&A session. And as for South America, the locations still stand. So we already covered kind of what's going on in South America, the silent zone, but the locations still stand from the warning areas from 4 days ago. The silent zone along the coast of Peru, going to the bend of Chile, and of course including South Ecuador, which just struck. So that kind of reduces the chances in South Ecuador, and it builds the chances in the silent zone here along the coast of Peru. So there you go, guys. I want to thank everybody who's been part of this. If you haven't already heard, we have a Facebook group made by the people themselves, not with my prodding at all. It's called the Dutch Squad EQ. Go search it on Facebook. It's a closed group. No trolls allowed. You guys control me on my public pages. You got all access to all that. You can come here and say stuff, but we ask that if you're only interested in geophysics, that you would join the group, because it's a place where people are sharing geophysics data. And we want to keep it clean, keep it safe, keep the science uncorrupted as opposed to the other stuff that's going on the internet right now. And to everybody who donated, oh man, I want to thank you so much. It's absolutely phenomenal what you guys gave. And we won't go into it here. I'll just tell you that if you guys like my work, there's a link down below that you can click on. No pressure, but if you like my work, I accept donations. I've made $230 now on the live stream total from YouTube. So, for a month and a half's work on YouTube. So I do rely on viewer donations to get my operation growing, going, keep me here all day long, that kind of stuff. And that's a sob story on that. And just as I was talking, 2.8, again another 2.8 on top of the other one that just struck again in western Oklahoma at the fracking operation. You know what? Let's end this video by actually taking the time to show all my new viewers in here, people who are new, you just came in, maybe you've never seen it. We got a real problem in the Midwest, and it's going to lead eventually into a much larger earthquake, and that's the fracking problem, where they're pumping large amounts of water into the ground to extract gas, pull that gas out and sell it on the market. Well, unfortunately, there's a byproduct, and the byproduct, it's not just groundwater pollution that everybody was complaining about a couple of years ago, but it's earthquakes. And when I show you what's there, I think you're just going to be kind of shocked at what they're doing to the environment, how it plays into greater earthquake threat around the planet, or at least around the country. So hopefully you will be able to see this. You can. You're going to see a bunch of little square pads as I zoom in. These aren't farms. Well, the greater fields are. Kind of scary they're doing farming out in here. But these are all frac wells. And they inject water down into the ground, polluted, dirty wastewater filled with toxic chemicals that's designed to break apart the shale and release the gas. And then you have farm fields right next to it. And they say it doesn't get into the aquifer, but that's baloney, because once a superfracture happens, and that's a term I created, superfracture, I had to make up a word to describe something that happened in Oklahoma while everybody else was denying fracking earthquakes back in 2010 and 2011. They called me a conspiracy theorist for saying fracking caused earthquakes. Well, anyways, I had to describe this thing that I started to see occurring, which was one earthquake, a large earthquake would strike, and then that would cause a swarm of other earthquakes to strike at the other wells nearby where the large earthquake struck, and they'd spread out like dominoes falling. And what was occurring, and what occurs, is when one large earthquake strikes, it causes vibration, obviously, which then shakes the other wells and cracks the concrete casements at the top of the wells where they pour and drill in. Look at all these, each one of them. So the concrete casement gets fractured below the well, and then that allows gas and water under high pressure to escape maybe a few thousand feet down, above where they would normally extract from, but into layers of shale that it's not supposed to break into, and it starts escaping out. And then that causes an earthquake of similar size. but at a shallower depth, and then guess what happens? That causes another earthquake and another well to leak, and it's a domino effect, and I called it super fracturing. I had to make up a name. What do you call it? I'm like, well, I could call it a broken plate, but I mean, I had to come up with a scientific term to describe what I was seeing. And they denied it and denied it and denied it, sent their best professionals against me. Professor Cliff Froelich from the University of Texas came and said fracking earthquakes were extremely rare and minor, and then 5.6, 5.4, 5.2s struck, knocked chimneys down, knocked facades off houses, and the USGS had to come in and basically admit. Now look at this. Remember how I told you all the squares were different pumping operations? Take a look at it, guys. You want to talk about getting greedy? Look. Look at this. And I can just keep going and going and going and going and going. Each one of them, take a look. We'll just keep going. And they wonder why they're getting fracking earth. I mean, it doesn't stop there. Keeps on going all the way over. These are just the wells that I marked. I got tired of marking the wells, and there's more and more that appear. And of course, this imagery, some of it's old, some of it's new, some older, or 2013. But what can you say about that? Don't you? I mean, isn't that a little bit disgusting? And then they wonder why earthquakes are striking at these spots. Here's a pipeline compressor station where they will connect the pipelines. So, you know, when you just look at the discoveries that we've made over the past the discovery I've made over the past few years on the fracking earthquakes and the asthenosphere earthquakes and the volcanoes and the related earthquakes and earthquake forecasting, and then you look at their denials and how each time, oh look, another earthquake just struck, guys. 3.6 now is struck. Just as I was talking, another 3.6 struck here, just like we were talking about. We're watching for 4.0 earthquake to strike. Now 3.6 has struck. How many people are in the chat room right now? 400 people still. Okay, 395. Good. You get to see it right here live as I'm talking. Look at it, guys. The earthquake we were watching for, the near 4.0 activity, is now struck, and it struck directly at the fracking operations that I was just showing. Wow. Let's go ahead and open up Google Earth one more time. Let's get a look at it one more time. There's 3.6 at the Kansas-Oklahoma border. Okay, let's just make sure that we can all see that. Can you guys see that? Let me refresh. Sure can. Now let's turn on Google Earth and go look up the location. Now we just saw the location that I just looked up, so it's not going to be far from there. It's literally going to be right by where I was just looking. What are the chances of that? My God. Okay. Here it is. All right, so what do we have? Oh, look at that. Right next to it. Oh, that's oil. That's oil. The difference between the natural gas tanks and the oil tanks are obvious too. Which ones are doing which? So sometimes they're extracting oil with the fracking, sometimes they're extracting natural gas. It's not just, what do we got here? Ooh, a large compressor station. Look at that. That's a big one. This must be pulling in for the whole operation. Look at the pipeline there, connected. You can see it going off in the directions there. But what's our nearest well? Let's get our nearest well head just to be thorough on this. Which one is the closest? Again, the imagery date is 2014, so there might be a well right here now. You know what? Let's go check on street level. Do we have a street level? Yeah, we sure do. Let's go see. Okay, street level is 2014 as well. Damn. Alright, well it's 2-year-old imagery, so we don't know if there's a new well there or not. Again, they throw these wells in within a few months' time or less. Sometimes it just takes a few weeks of drilling. They drill a few thousand feet, get it in, get her done, and move on. And the nearest well, I'm going to do my line measurement tool right now, is 0.8 miles. Let's get that in feet first. 4,000 feet, so not even a mile. Kilometers, 1.3 kilometers. And that's all she wrote, guys. I mean, again, it struck just as I was talking, so that's just super interesting to see. It's right along the edge of the craton. It's again proof that the pressure transfers to the east and that the weak spots are the pumping operations right along the edge, on the interior edge, which professionals denied, unfortunately. If you guys like my research, like I said, I'm financed by my viewers. No greed. I'm not buying new threads and getting a new car, going on vacations or partying or anything like that. I'm trying to do experiments, write a book, and be here every day. And so I do rely on your support. Also, if you just want to, if you can't help that way, you could just share. You could just share my stuff. I'm totally cool with that. If you guys want to help me and you can't give, share my information. That's just as good. Get it out. So, you know, I mean, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. And then also, one more thing. I want you guys to congratulate yourselves for being here each day and growing it like you did. And the way you can see how it's growing is right next to the share button. If you don't want to click the share button, click the more button, which is right next to the share button below the video that you're watching right now. And then click on statistics. And you'll be able to see that this video has just gone, or this live stream has gone through the roof, and now we're well over 200,000 people reached in the past couple weeks. And the reason that is because you guys got involved. That's the only reason. If I'm here on my own, it's just one thing, it might reach my subs or whatever. But because you guys actually care about earthquakes, you care about seismic information, and you see what's happening. We got shut down today when the earthquake struck in Japan and off the coast of Oregon, the two forecast spots. But I'm not going to get into that here, just to let you know that, you know, people are watching, big names are involved, and you guys are involved too. And when I write the book, and when it's done, I should say, because I'm partially done. It's going to take me a little while, but once the book is done, you guys are going to be mentioned in it. Maybe not by name, but I'm going to show the world how the dark ages of science still exist in denial, and especially in the world of geology. They're like the slowest ones to, you know, they're slower than a rock. Okay, they are the slowest of the slow when it comes to adjusting their old scientific dogmas from like the 17 and 1800s that they're still abiding by. You know, like earthquakes can't be forecast. It comes from the 1800s now. I mean, that's just some foolishness that they're still maintaining. So we're going to change that. And it's okay to change. I want scientists to know the USGS logo. This is funny. Listen to this. We'll sign off after this. USGS logo is a changing world, let's see, a changing world for science? No, science for a changing world. That's what it is. USGS, science for a changing world. And we're changing that to a changing world for science. And it's the USDS for dutchinse. And on that note, guys, I want to thank everybody in here for coming in. You guys are the best. Seriously, it topped out tonight in the 400 range, which means we're getting through to more people. This stream is always going on, guys, so you can always come back anytime. I'll be back nightly at 10 p.m., of course. But throughout the day, this thing's going. There's a chat room running. We're all talking about pretty much the same stuff when it comes to seismicity. If you want to know what's going on and you don't want to just check in with the USGS, you'll see the European feed, you'll see the European earthquakes, which sometimes, and I'm not dogging the USGS too hard now, I'm not. I'm just calling them to task because I'm into science. Sometimes the USGS misses big earthquakes. Earthquakes you'd expect them to carry on their site. And either there's something going on at the USGS that's preventing them from accurately reporting earthquakes in a timely manner. Maybe somebody's got the political button turned up and down to try and stop people from... I don't know why they would do it. I don't want to get into speculating reasons why it would happen, but I can just tell you it is happening. So we have to rely on international feeds as well as the USGS. You are not getting the full picture if you're going to the USGS for information only. You have to come pretty much now to a few people online who can combine the information and present it to you in a combined fashion. I'm one of those people. That's why this live stream's blowing up the way it is. Because people are realizing they're missing earthquakes. And big earthquakes, fives, mid fives, fours, off the coast of the United States. All kinds of stuff you would expect the USGS to not miss. And they are dropping the ball. And that's why I'm picking it up. And they'll realize sooner or later, National Science Foundation, whoever's in charge, will realize that censoring or at least being slow on the data is going to get them, they're going to miss the bus. They're going to miss the boat. They have missed the boat, scientifically speaking. That all being said, we'll kick the earthquakes back on to the USGS and EMSC European combined feed, and we'll turn it down for the last 48 hours. I'll put some music back on, of course, so people can have something. Oh, what just happened here? Hold on. A silent zone just struck. Indonesia. Look at that. There you go. Middle of the silent zone, just to the west. Struck, 5.2. That's a good way to end it. So, have a plan, be prepared just in case. You may never have to use it, but in times of unrest, it's just a good time to have the plans dusted off. If you live on the West Coast, like I said, 5.0 activity should strike, and when it does, that will then shake things up, and if you're not prepared, things could fly off the shelves, you might be caught off guard in the middle of the night, so we just want to be ready for that, okay? So much love to everybody. Thanks for getting the word out. I'll be back in an hour, 1 hour from now. So tonight's update went 53 minutes. But I'll be back roughly at midnight Central Time. And we'll do a Q&A for another hour and just answer people's questions, shoot the shit for a little while, have a good time. And I want to, again, say much love. All the people who have been helping me, I couldn't do it without you guys, for real. And gals, for real, you guys are awesome. Cheers.